Chapter 10 Alpha, A Symphora Alpha, Grammar Discussion. The title of this chapter, A Symphora, means a misfortune, a bringing together of bad luck. We can find the meaning of this word from the verb symphero. Phero is to bring, sum with or together, so symphero is to bring together. The noun form, a symphora, would then be a bringing together or event or circumstance. Most often, a bad circumstance, a misfortune. Every once in a while, though, it can mean a good circumstance or a good fortune. This chapter begins with a word study. Number 1, we are to identify agonistic. It means competitive. It comes from the stem of the verb agonizonde that appears on line 21 of passage A in this chapter. The stem is agon. Number 2, macroeconomics is the study of large-scale economic trends, from the Greek makros, meaning large, and ta oikonomika, where we get the word economics. Number 3, xenophobia is a fear of strangers, from oxenos, which is a foreigner or stranger, and the stem in phoveome, I fear. Number 4, pyromaniac, meaning one mad about fire, from topur, fire, and a mania is a madness or mania. Number 5, ophthalmic means concerned with the eyes, from ophthalmos, the eye, and this word was actually used in the 2nd century by Galen. The word was ophthalmikos. There are 4 parts to the grammar of this lesson. They all concentrate on future forms. Number 1 gives us a paradigm for verb forms with sigmatic futures. The book begins this section by saying most verbs form the future tense by adding the suffix sigma and adding the same endings as the present tense. But that is not quite what is going on. It is true that we have the same endings as the present tense. The future and the present share non-past endings. They are both non-past tenses. What distinguishes them is aspect, stems. The present has the thematic incomplete stem, omicron epsilon. It's a variable vowel. The future has something very similar. It has sigma plus that thematic variable vowel. So it is possible to view it as the future is just adding a sigma to the stem. I wouldn't want to call it a suffix. I would call it an addition to the stem. But more precisely, what's going on is we're swapping out an incomplete stem, just the thematic vowel, with a complete stem, one that focuses on the action as a unit, a concept. The future is not in progress. Only the present is in progress. The future is not unfolding. It's a thought. They are concepts, they're units. The way we distinguish aspect, incomplete versus complete, is by stem. So the present tense has the incomplete stem, omicron epsilon, and the future has a complete stem, sigma omicron epsilon. Now, since the difference between these two stems is just a sigma, it appears like we're adding a sigma, but really we're swapping out stems. Since the future has an identical connection between stem and ending, the variable vowel plus ending, it will look exactly like the present except for the sigma. So in this paradigm, I have the stems in red and the endings in blue, and where the stem and endings are combined, I've combined the colors to be purple. So the first person singular, luso, we see clearly the red stem sigma, and then we're kind of hiding the thematic vowel and the ending mixed together to form that purple omega. The same is true with the second person, lucis, you will loose. We see the red stem sigma, and then we kind of miss the second part of the stem. It's purple, it's combined with the ending. And then the third person, likewise, has the red stem and then the purple stem and ending combined to form E. And then finally in the plural, we start to really see the separation of stem and ending. We see the true red so stem and then completely blue ending men. The same is true with the second person plural. We can see in those two forms that the stem is truly sigma plus variable vowel. It's even clearer in the middle forms. Here we have very little contraction between the stem and the ending, since the endings begin with consonants, mostly. Notice that there are no imperatives on these charts, because there are no future imperatives. All imperatives are speech acts. You command something to be done immediately. Now this paradigm is how noble roots will look. Noble roots are roots that don't combine with stems, but we will have plenty of consonant combinations that can now combine with sigma. This didn't occur in the present tense. For example, vlepo, the root vlep, ended in a consonant, and then our stem ending o doesn't combine because consonants and vowels don't combine. But now the stem begins with sigma, and that will be placed next to the consonant that ends the root. We'd end up with something like vlepsome in the middle, or deponent. And using our square stops, we know that bilabials followed by sigma will combine to form the combination letter psi. So the future of vlepo, when it goes to deponent, will be vlepsome. The future of pempo will be pimpso. The future of grapho, even though that's not a P, it's still a bilabial, will be grapso. Gutturals work the same way. Remember, a guttural followed by a sigma will combine to form xi. So lego, the root ending gamma, will combine with the stem beginning sigma to form lexo, which doesn't occur very often. Far more often it uses a different word entirely, ero, for the future of I say. But we would see that with ago, for example. The future of ago, can you guess it? Would be oxo, with a xi. Kappa very clearly would form xi, it sounds like it. The oko, happens to go deponent, would be the oxima. A double toff in the present form is really a clue that the root ends in a guttural, fulak. So that would yield fulaxo in the future. Thekome, I receive, to make I will receive, will be thexome. I wonder if that has anything to do with the right hand, thexia. It's funny that they put echo here because really it changes roots. Notice its breather changes in the future. Exo has a rough breather on there, so it looks like there's a combination going on there, but really the root is changing. And then we have another form, skeso, which is a different root entirely. It's a contract root, ske, and all contract verbs will lengthen their contract vowel prior to consonant beginning stems, which includes every other stem. So you're going to love contract verbs. So you're going to be able to predict their forms very easily. The only remaining type of letter in our square of stops are the dentals, and you remember that they drop before sigma. So spevtho turns to spefso. Pitho turns to piso. Pato, to sprinkle. Notice the true root isn't a double toff, it's a single toff, and those drop before sigma. So we have paso, I will sprinkle. Paraskevazo, I prepare. Friday is called Paraskeve, the day of preparation. Zeta is treated as a dental, and it drops to yield Paraskevaso. Now, unfortunately, that is not true with iso verbs. If that zeta is preceded by an iota, something different will normally happen, although it doesn't happen with baptizo, but it does happen here with comizo. With comizo and other iso verbs, the zeta dropped out, leaving the sigma, and then for some reason they stuck an epsilon in there. Then intervocalic sigma was weak and dropped out, and what yielded was something that looked like an epsilon contract verb. But we know that comizo is not an epsilon contract verb. So these are called contract futures because they look like contract verbs, but yet that contraction conveys future tense. So if you see a verb that you know is not a contract verb, like comizo, yet it's accented as a contract verb, having its accent toward the end, comio, or in the middle, comiume. You know it's future. And actually, I like their title for this, asigmatic contract future forms. They call it asigmatic because this is one of the forms where the future doesn't have the sigma. On to number 3. Now, most contract verbs won't be contract futures. They will function very regularly. You simply lengthen their contract vowel before the consonant stem. So phileo becomes phileso. There are exceptions to this, like kaleo. And in your vocabulary list, you learned that theaume, the alpha there, didn't lengthen to eta. It just lengthened to a long alpha. But look at eyeume, I lead. You take that epsilon, eye, and lengthen it to eta. Eyesome. Timao becomes timeso. You should become very familiar with this pattern and enjoy it, because as soon as you know that you're dealing with a contract verb, you should be able to spin out all of the principal parts, because you're not going to have any strange contractions. You'll just merely lengthen that contract letter and hook on your stem and endings that you've learned for your other principal parts. Now, I disagree with how they classify yignome and thelo. I don't think we have 3 different roots, one for the present, one for the future, and one for the aorist, like we would with the English go and went, 2 different roots entirely. I think we have one root for all 3, and for yignome, I think it's yen, irama epsilon nu. And what happened in the first principal part is, a lot of times in that first principal part, we get extra things. We get some infixes. For example, yenosko, we get that sk, sigma kappa. We also get an ancient reduplication in yignosko. Here we have that ancient reduplication at the beginning. It's kind of this, it used to show a state. So what we have in yignome is an old reduplication, weak epsilon dropping out, and then the root ending nu. So I think we still have the same original root, yin. It just has been modified in the first principal part. The same is true for the second principal part. We want to say yin, and then our stem and ending would be some, but we may not follow a liquid or a nasal with a sigma. And so they're going to resolve this a number of different ways, as we find out in the next lesson. But one of the ways that we're seeing right here is to stick something in between. And the smallest something we have is an epsilon. So the second root, yine, is really just a result of a problem that we're having in the second principal part because of the stem. It's not a different word. It's not a different root. It's the result of the yen root slamming up against the soma stem and ending. They add the smallest thing they have, an epsilon, and it becomes a virtual contract verb. And what do we do with contract verbs? That's why it's in this section. We lengthen them before the sigma. So we end up with yenesome. The same process happens with athelo. I think we have thel or athel being the root for all 3 principal parts, 1, 2, and 3. Now, there are many verbs that have deponent futures. A lot of these have to do with motion or perception or feeling. There's no real way of anticipating which words will have deponent futures and which will be regular. You just have to memorize the first 3 principal parts of all these common verbs and know that they have deponent futures. So I think it would be a good exercise to make this list on another sheet of paper and then add the 3rd principal part on, since you're going to have to learn all 3 principal parts eventually anyway, and have akuo, akusama, akusa. Vadizo, notice it is an iso verb, and so it becomes an asigmatic epsilon contract future. Vadiume, and then for the aorist or the simple past, they all have an epsilon at the beginning. Evadisa. Notice the zeta drops before the sigma. So you can just look these up in the lexicon in the back to find that 3rd principal part. The true root of veno is really ve, and so it consistently has vesome. Vlepo, vlepsome, just like akuo, akusome. Voao, I shout. Alpha contract, so that alpha will lengthen to an eta. Voesome. Ignosko. Gnosome. Notice that the root is just gamma, nu, omega. The first principal part has that old reduplication and the infix sigma kappa. That's stripped away in the second principal part, gno, and we end up with gnosome. The oko has a guttural root, and so the only strange thing about it is it's deponent. The sigma will combine with the guttural, the oaks, and then we have that strange deponent future, the oksome. Thavmazo, okay, so that has a zeta that will drop prior to sigma. We add our deponent ending. Thavmasome. Orao is truly irregular. It is like go and went. Our first root is ora, and our second root is op, entirely different words. They've just been connected like we've connected go and went. Just like vlepo had a deponent future, dakuo had a deponent future, verbs of perception, so does orao. Opsome, I will see. Far more common than vlepsome. Pascho, notice that the root for the future is penth. The dental theta drops. Then we have a problem, the nasal prior to the sigma. And instead of inserting something between them, we remove the nasal. And anytime we remove either the nasal or the sigma, we're going to have to compensate the root by lengthening it. And we get pisome. Pino, I drink. The actual root is P, and we see piome. I think you're getting the general trend that we can't really trust the first principal part to determine our root. It's far easier to see the root in the future and the aorist, the second and third principal part. The first principal part often has these infixes that disguise the root. Peepto, I fall. I believe we have a different root entirely. Pesume, I will fall. Pleo, a verb of motion here. We have a different root, plef, which would yield plefsome, or plefse, an epsilon contract, that would yield plefsume, I will sail. Trajo, kind of like orao, having a different root entirely. The future form is drame. So trajo, I run, but dramume, I will run. And the last one, fevro, it's a simple guttural root, which the sigma will combine with to form xi, and we get fefskome, I will flee. We shouldn't forget the future of imi, I am. Remember that the root is s. We didn't see that so clearly in the present, just as we've seen elsewhere that the present has combinations and infixes that obscure it. But it was there. The sigma was weak after epsilon and dropped out and combined, and so we just don't see it so much in the present. But it was there. Thankfully, it really sticks out in the future, and we just have s plus our deponent endings to create the future of to be. Esome, esi, este. Notice that there is no thematic vowel for that one. It's not esete. Our thematic stem and endings would really be ome, esse, ete, omethe, este, onda. But notice the third singular doesn't have it. It's not esete. It seems like it would be a little repetitive, so it's just este. Very close to est. And then remember the compounds of imi. I am away, opimi, I am present, parimi. Those can be difficult as participles, as we see in this lesson. The future form of those will just have the op prefix plus s, the root, and then the indi, nome. So, apesome, I will be away, I will be absent. Paresome, I will be there. Okay, that's it for the grammar of this lesson. Be sure to review everything. I think the best way to work on the concepts here is to learn the vocabulary. Work through the vocabulary, make sure you can write the first three principal parts for all the vocabulary words, and then make sure that you can conjugate these different types of words in the future. Make sure that you can make future forms for noble roots, future forms for bilabial roots, future forms for guttural roots, future forms for dental roots. Know how ESO-type verbs will be affected in the future. Know how to create the future for contract verbs. And then be aware that when you're learning vocabulary, you must memorize which verbs have deponent futures. And finally, don't forget to review the future of to be. Work through the vocabulary in these forms, and then make sure that you work through all of these exercises. You can get the most out of the exercises in this chapter if you do them multiple times. That goes for reading the story and discussing the story as well.